My mother stood on my porch, with a manila envelope pressed flat against her chest like it was a shield. Rain was dripping from her hair onto the folder, but she didn't ask to come in, and she didn't look at my husband until she shoved the papers toward him and said, "This is just to help Lauren keep her house." Malcolm opened the first page, read for maybe 10 seconds, and his face went completely still. Then he turned the document around and pointed to the line that said, "Ratification of prior personal guarantee," with his full legal name typed beneath it. My name is Hannah Elise Mercer-Brooks. I'm 33 years old. That was the moment I realized my family hadn't come back because they regretted abandoning me. They had come back because the fraud they built using my husband's name was starting to collapse. 5 years earlier, my mother had walked out of my wedding before the vows. Not quietly. Not with some private grief she couldn't control. She stood up in the second row of that little chapel in Richmond, gathered her purse, and said, loud enough for Malcolm's mother to hear, "I can't bless this." For my father, Russell Mercer, followed her. My younger sister, Lauren, followed him. 3 cousins left after them because nobody in my family ever wanted to be the last one standing against my mother. I remember Malcolm squeezing my hand so gently it almost broke me. He didn't ask me to chase them. He didn't ask me to forgive them. He just leaned close and whispered, "Look at me. We're still here. BR. So we got married in front of the people who stayed. For 5 years, I built a life around that sentence. We're still here." I changed my last name to Mercer-Brooks because Malcolm said I didn't have to erase myself to belong to him. We bought a small townhouse. He expanded his electrical contracting business. I worked as a claims analyst for a medical insurer, which meant I spent my days reading forms, finding inconsistencies, and noticing when a document didn't match the story someone was telling. That detail matters. Because when my mother came back, she did not come with an apology. She came with paperwork. The envelope had my sister Lauren's name on the outside in blue ink. Inside were about 30 pages clipped together, some damp at the edges from the rain. The top page had a logo from a company called Ridgeway Residential Lending, and under it, in bold letters, were the words, "Default Workout Package." My mother kept talking before either of us could ask a question. Lauren got behind after the divorce. It's temporary. They just need Malcolm's signature because his name is already connected to the file. Malcolm looked up slowly. "My name is what?" For my mother's mouth tightened. "Don't make this dramatic." I stepped closer and took the second page from his hand. It was not a normal mortgage form. I knew enough from insurance contracts to recognize the language was too specific, too defensive. It said, "Malcolm Isaiah Brooks acknowledged and ratified a personal guarantee allegedly executed on March 14, 2022, in connection with a refinance secured by the property at 611 Alder Creek Lane." Lauren's house. My sister's house. The same sister who had texted me after my wedding, "You made your choice. Don't expect us to pretend this is normal." I read the paragraph twice because my brain refused to accept what my eyes understood. Ratify means confirm, not apply, not consider. Confirm something that supposedly already existed. Malcolm took the page back from me and flipped to the signature packet. His name was typed on a guarantor line. My name appeared 2 pages later as family contact and gift fund recipient. BR gift fund recipient. There was a listed amount beside it. $42,500. I had never received $42,500 from my family in my life. Not for a house. Not for a wedding. Not for a medical bill. Not even when I was 19 and working 2 jobs to finish college because my father said helping me would make me entitled. My voice sounded far away when I asked, "Why does this say I got money?" My mother glanced toward the street like she was more worried about the neighbors than the document in my hand. "It's accounting language," she said. "It doesn't mean anything." Malcolm let out a quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it. "It means a lender believes I guaranteed your daughter's mortgage," he said. "It means somebody submitted my information. It means somebody is now asking me to confirm a signature I never gave." My mother finally looked at him. And the look on her face was not shame. It was irritation. Like he was being difficult. Like the man she once refused to sit beside at dinner owed her a favor because the forgery had become inconvenient. I asked her who prepared the documents. She said, "A loan officer." I asked which one. She said, "I don't remember." I asked how Malcolm's name got into Lauren's mortgage file. That was when she snapped. "You married into this family," she said to him, sharp and cold. "You can help this family." The porch went silent except for the rain hitting the steps. Malcolm closed the folder and handed it back to her. "No," he said. "I'm going to find out who put me in that file." My mother's face changed then. Just for 1 second. Not anger. Not pride. Fear. And that was the first honest thing she had shown me in 5 years. My mother recovered quickly. She had spent my entire childhood recovering quickly. From cruel comments. From slammed doors. From my father's drinking at Christmas. From Lauren's mistakes that somehow became my responsibility. She tucked the folder back under her arm and said, "Fine. Be selfish." Malcolm didn't move. I did. I stepped between them before my mother could turn away. "You're not leaving with those?" Her eyebrows lifted. "Excuse me?" If my husband's name is on them, we're making copies. They're Lauren's private documents. They stopped being private when you brought them to our porch and demanded his signature. For a second, I thought she might actually refuse. Then Malcolm pulled out his phone and calmly photographed the top page. My mother's hand shot out. "Don't you dare!" He looked at her hand, then at her face. "You came here asking me to sign a legal document tied to an alleged guarantee. I'm preserving evidence." "BR evidence." That word landed like a glass breaking. My mother's voice dropped. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," Malcolm said. "I run a licensed contracting company. I sign credit applications, insurance bonds, permits. I know what happens when someone uses your identity on finance paperwork." I had never loved him more than I did in that moment. Standing there in gray sweatpants and a faded college hoodie, barefoot on our porch, refusing to bow to the woman who once told me marrying him would make me unrecognizable. Mom left without another word. But she did something strange before she got in her car. She called someone. I watched through the rain-streaked glass as she pressed the phone to her ear, looked back at our house, and said one sentence I could barely make out. She has copies. Not he. She. That night, Malcolm and I sat at the kitchen table with the photos enlarged on my laptop. The more we read, the worse it got. The refinance had happened 3 years after our wedding, when Lauren was still married to her ex-husband, Todd. The loan amount was $386,000. Attached to the workout package was a summary showing missed payments, late fees, and a ballooning arrears balance that made my stomach turn. But the part that made Malcolm go completely quiet was the guarantor information. His date of birth. The last 4 digits of his social security number. His business address. An old email he hadn't used since before we met. "Who in your family would have this?" he asked. "No one," I said automatically. Then I stopped. Because someone had. My father. 2 years before the wedding, when Malcolm and I were still dating, Dad had asked Malcolm for a copy of his contractor's license and insurance certificate. He said he wanted a quote on rewiring a rental property he owned. Malcolm sent the documents over, trying to be respectful, trying to win over a man who already looked at him like he was trespassing. Dad never hired him. At the time, I thought it was another insult. Now I wondered if it had been research. The next morning, Malcolm called Ridgeway Residential Lending. He put them on speaker. The first representative kept saying she couldn't discuss the file without authorization. Malcolm said, "I'm not asking about the borrower's account. I'm reporting potential identity theft involving my name." That changed her tone. We were transferred twice. Then a woman named Patricia from the fraud department came on the line. Malcolm gave his name, his business address, and the loan number from the top of the package. There was typing. A pause. More typing. Then Patricia said, carefully, "Mr. Brooks, our records show you are listed as a personal guarantor on the March 2022 refinance." "Br, I did not sign that," Malcolm said. "Did you authorize anyone to sign on your behalf?" "Br, no." "Did you appear before a notary on or around March 14, 2022? "Br, no." Patricia went silent long enough that my pulse started pounding in my ears. Then she said, "I need you to file an identity theft affidavit and a police report. I'm also placing a temporary fraud hold on communications regarding enforcement of the guarantee." "Br, enforcement?" I asked before I could stop myself. Patricia's voice softened. "Mrs. Brooks, the loan is in serious default. If the workout is not approved, the lender may pursue all responsible parties." "Br, all responsible parties," meaning Malcolm. Meaning my family had tried to turn the man they rejected into the safety net for the daughter they protected. Patricia emailed the affidavit while we were still on the phone. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Lauren. Her name hadn't appeared on my screen in 4 years. I answered without saying hello. She was crying, or pretending to. "Hannah, why are you doing this?" I stared at Malcolm. "But doing what?" "Mom said you're trying to get me arrested." "No," I said. "I'm trying to find out why my husband's name is on your mortgage." There was a sharp breath on the other end. Then Lauren whispered, "I told them this would happen." My blood went cold. "Told who?" She didn't answer. "Lauren," I said, standing up so fast my chair scraped the floor. "What did you know?" She started sobbing harder. "It wasn't supposed to matter. Dad said Malcolm had money, and you owed us after humiliating Mom, and the lender just needed someone stable on paper." I gripped the edge of the counter. "On paper?" Lauren's voice cracked. "Hannah, I'm going to lose the house." And for the first time in my life, I heard what she was really saying. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I lied." Not, "We used him." Just, "Save me from consequences." Then Malcolm reached for the phone, put it on speaker, and asked one question. "Lauren, who signed my name?" Lauren stopped crying. That was the first thing I noticed. The sobs cut off so suddenly it felt rehearsed, like she had been holding a prop and dropped it. "I don't know," she said. Malcolm's voice stayed calm. "That's not an answer." I said I don't know. You knew my name was on the loan." I knew Dad was handling it." My stomach twisted. "Handling what?" Lauren breathed shakily. "The refinance." Todd's credit was wrecked. Mine wasn't good enough alone. Dad said he had a way to get it approved. With Malcolm's identity?" I asked. "He said it wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Silence. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. Dad said Malcolm would never fight it because it would make him look bad." Malcolm leaned back in his chair. I felt the room tilt. "What does that mean?" I asked. Lauren whispered, "Hannah, you know how people are. A black contractor accused of fraud against a white family? Dad said he'd be careful, that he wouldn't want attention." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Because there it was. Not hidden behind tradition. Not dressed up as concern. Not pretending to be about values. The same racism that made my mother walk out of my wedding had been useful to them later. They had counted on Malcolm swallowing a crime because they believed the world would punish him faster than it punished them. Malcolm stood. "Tell your father," he said. "I'm filing the police report today." Lauren panicked. "No, wait." He ended the call." I expected him to rage. Instead, he walked to the sink, braced both hands on the counter, and lowered his head. I went to him. "Malcolm." He didn't turn around. "I have spent 7 years being polite to people who thought I was beneath them," he said quietly. "And when they finally needed something, they didn't ask me. They stole from me." By noon, we were at the police station. The officer at the front desk looked bored until Malcolm laid out the fraud packet, the lender email, and screenshots from the call log. Then he called in a detective named Alvarez, who took us into a small interview room. Detective Alvarez listened without interrupting. When Malcolm finished, she said, "Do you have any proof of who signed?" "Not yet," he said. "But Ridgway should have the closing file. Notary record. ID copy. Signature page." Alvarez nodded. "We'll request it. You should also contact the Notary Commission and freeze your credit." Then she looked at me. "Are you willing to make a statement about your family's involvement?" My throat tightened. 5 years earlier, I had lost my family by choosing my husband. Now I had to choose him again, this time under fluorescent lights with a recorder on the table. "Yes," I said, "I am. By evening my father called." Not texted. Called. I put him on speaker. His voice was warm in that dangerous way it got before he blamed you for something. Hannah. This has gotten out of hand." "No," I said. "It was out of hand when you put Malcolm on Lauren's mortgage." A pause. Then a sigh. "Your mother shouldn't have gone over there." That confirmed more than he meant it to. Malcolm's eyes met mine. Dad continued. "Nobody was trying to hurt anyone. It was a family arrangement." I wasn't asked," Malcolm said. Dad went quiet. Then his voice hardened. "This is between me and my daughter." No," Malcolm said. "It's between me and whoever forged my signature." My father laughed once. "You want to be careful throwing words like that around." Malcolm smiled, but it was cold. "I was just told to file a police report." "So I did." The line went dead silent. Then Dad said, "You did what?" I had never heard him sound afraid before. Police report," Malcolm repeated. "Identity theft affidavit. Fraud hold with Ridgway." Dad exploded. You stupid girl," he shouted. And I flinched even though he wasn't in the room. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stared at the phone. And suddenly I was 16 again, apologizing for making Mom cry because I got accepted to a college too far away. 22. Being told I was selfish for not co-signing Lauren's car. 28. Standing in a wedding dress while my family walked out. But then Malcolm's hand covered mine. I found my voice. "I know exactly what I've done," I said. "I told the truth." Dad lowered his voice. "If you keep going, Lauren loses the house. Your mother loses everything. And I promise you, Hannah, the truth won't save you from what happens next." What happens next?" Malcolm asked. Dad said, "You'll find out." He hung up. For about 30 seconds, neither of us moved. Then my email chimed. It was from Patricia at Ridgway. Subject, requested closing documentation. Attached was the notarized guarantee. Malcolm opened it. The signature was bad. Almost comically bad. His first name slanted wrong. The B in Brooks looked nothing like his. But the notary stamp beneath it made my knees go weak. Because I knew the name. Deborah Klein. My mother's best friend. Deborah Klein had been at every birthday party of my childhood. She was the woman who brought lemon bars to church potlucks, who called my mother sweetheart, who once told me I was brave for wearing my natural curls in 8th grade, as if my hair were a charity project. And now her notary stamp sat beneath my husband's forged signature. Malcolm stared at the document. "Do you know her well?" My mother's closest friend. He nodded once slowly like another piece had clicked into place. "Then this wasn't just your dad." I scrolled through the closing file Patricia had sent. There was a copy of Malcolm's driver's license. Except it wasn't. It was an image of his license number and birth date typed into a verification form, with a box checked, ID reviewed remotely due to borrower hardship. Remote notarization. No video record attached. No IP log. No certificate beyond Deborah's stamp and signature. Detective Alvarez called us the next morning after receiving the same file. "This is sloppy," she said. But sloppy doesn't mean simple. Her voice dropped. Your father could go to prison. But there it was. Not Malcolm could be ruined. Not we betrayed you. Your father could go to prison. I said, then maybe Dad shouldn't have committed a crime. But Mom slapped me. It wasn't hard enough to knock me down, but the sound cracked through the lobby. Everyone froze. For one heartbeat, she looked shocked at herself. Then she pointed at me and hissed, after everything we did for you. Brr, I touched my cheek. You disowned me. Brr, we raised you. Brr, you used my husband. Brr, you chose him over blood. Brr, no, I said, you made me choose. And I chose the person who didn't forge documents in my name. Brr, her eyes filled, but it wasn't grief. It was fury with tears on top. Bar, if Lauren loses that house, her kids have nowhere to go. Lauren has Todd. She has you. She has Dad. Brr, Mom's mouth tightened. And I understood. Dad wasn't just afraid of criminal charges. They were broke. I said, what happened to your savings? Brr, she looked away. Brr, what happened? Brr, she whispered, your father refinanced our house too. Brr, my stomach dropped. Bar, with whose name on it? Brr, she didn't answer. I stepped closer. Mom? Brr, she shook her head. It was supposed to be temporary. Lauren needed help after Todd left. Your father said he could move money around. Then rates changed, payments changed. Todd stopped paying child support, and everything got tangled. BR, tangled is when Christmas lights knot together, I said. This is fraud. She grabbed my wrist. If Malcolm signs the ratification, Ridgeway will restructure. No police. No foreclosure. No investigation. Beer, I pulled free. You still think he should save you. Beer, I think he should show mercy. Brr, I laughed because if I didn't, I would scream. You told me he would never be family. Brr, Mom leaned in, voice venomous. And he isn't. But he benefited from marrying you. Brr, that sentence ended something in me. All the years I had imagined a door reopening. All the secret hope that one day she would hold my children, apologize to my husband, and admit love mattered more than her prejudice. Gone. I turned to the receptionist, who was staring with wide eyes. Please call security. Brr, Mom's face went white. Hannah. Brr, no. You leave now, or I add this to the police report. BR security escorted her out. 2 hours later, Detective Alvarez called again. Bor, we spoke with Deborah Klein. Bor, my grip tightened on the phone. And? She says your father brought her the documents and told her Mr. Brooks had authorized the signature, but couldn't appear due to work travel. BR, that's illegal. BS. She knows that now. Bur now? Bur Alvarez paused. She's cooperating. She also provided text messages from your mother. Bur, I closed my eyes. Bur, what did they say? The detective's voice was careful. One text from your mother reads, Russell says, just stamp it. Malcolm will never challenge us. Hannah won't risk embarrassing the family. Bur, I felt Malcolm's hand on my back. Alvarez continued. There's more. Your father may have used Mr. Brooks' information on a second credit application tied to his business line. Beer, Malcolm's expression changed. His business. Not just his name. Not just Lauren's house. They had reached into the company he built from nothing. That night, a certified letter arrived. From my father's attorney. It accused Malcolm of harassment, me of defamation against the Mercer family, and demanded we withdraw our police complaint within 72 hours. At the bottom, in my father's handwriting, was one sentence, "But you still don't understand who you're hurting." Malcolm read it, folded the letter carefully, and said, "Now we get a lawyer." But our lawyer's name was Simone Carter, and after reading my father's letter, she smiled once, not kindly. "Good," she said. "They put their intimidation in writing." But within a week, Simone had sent preservation demands to Ridgeway, Deborah Klein, my father, my mother, and Lauren. Malcolm froze his credit, locked down his business accounts, and filed reports with every agency Simone named. Ridgway's fraud department moved fast after that. The second application Detective Alvarez mentioned turned out to be worse than we feared. My father had tried to use Malcolm's business information to strengthen a line of credit for one of his failing rental properties. It hadn't been approved, but the attempt was documented. My father's defense collapsed when Deborah handed over her texts. My mother had known. Lauren had known enough. And Dad had been the one pushing everyone forward, certain Malcolm would stay quiet because men like him were expected to be grateful when people like my family merely tolerated them. He was wrong. 3 months later, Russell Mercer pled guilty to identity theft and loan fraud. Deborah lost her notary commission and took a plea deal for cooperation. Lauren's house went into foreclosure anyway. My mother called me once after the hearing. I almost didn't answer. When I did, she didn't say hello. She said, "Your father looks 10 years older." I said, "Malcolm looked like that the night he realized you all stole from him." Silence. Then she whispered, "You destroyed this family." No, I said. I finally stopped protecting the people who did. She hung up. I cried after that. Not because I regretted it, but because some part of me had still been waiting for a mother who could look at me and see pain she didn't cause on purpose. That mother never came. 6 months later, Ridgway formally removed Malcolm from every document. Simone helped us settle a civil claim, enough to cover legal fees, credit monitoring, and the business losses Malcolm suffered while banks investigated the attempted fraud. But the real healing didn't come from paperwork. It came slowly. It came when Malcolm's mother invited me over and taught me how to make her peach cobbler without once making me feel like an outsider. It came when Malcolm changed the locks on his office, then hung a framed copy of his first business license behind his desk, like a flag planted in ground nobody could steal. It came when I stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. By the following spring, we hosted dinner in our backyard. Malcolm grilled ribs. His nephews ran through the grass. Our friends sat under string lights, laughing too loudly, passing plates hand to hand. At one point, I went inside for napkins and saw him through the kitchen window. He was standing by the grill, smiling at something his mother said. The evening sun caught the side of his face, warm and gold, and I remembered him on our wedding day whispering, "We're still here." Back then, it sounded like survival. Now it sounded like victory. I walked outside and slipped my hand into his. He looked down at me. "You okay?" I looked around at the family that stayed, the family we chose, the family that didn't require betrayal as proof of love. Then I looked at the man my mother once told me not to marry if I wanted a family. And I finally understood. Marrying Malcolm didn't cost me a family. It showed me which one was real. If you were in my place, would you have signed those papers to keep the peace, or let the truth burn it all down? If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And if you want more stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.